Hello friends, this is Maureen Maloney and welcome to my doc journey. Today I wanted to talk about what equipment you need to become a videographer. When I was considering getting into documentary filmmaking, I took an initial filmmaking class to learn basic camera techniques, editing techniques, stuff like that. But I knew that I had a lot to learn before I was ready to become a documentary filmmaker, and I did not want to go back to school to study film. So I ended up, I actually just kind of fell into videography unintentionally. I got a camera, which at the time, in 2007, it was a Sony Handycam, and it's not a bad camera, but I got the camera, I took the class, and then a friend of mine ran into a photographer who needed a videographer for a gig, and he couldn't find one, and she recommended me, and I got hired. So I do think that it's a good way to start learning if you think you want to become a filmmaker. It's good to know at least a little bit about all the different aspects of it. At some point, you might decide, if you just have ideas for films that you might want to make, you might decide to just be the producer and to be that person that finds the money and finds the team and puts it together and makes the film happen. Or you might decide you just really love doing the shooting, and so you might focus on becoming a camera operator and go into that career. Or an editor, or any number of things. I think I've talked before in a previous episode about some of the specific jobs that you can have. But if you're starting out and you really don't know, but you think, I like films, I'd like to make films, getting into videography is a pretty good way to go. And there's definitely lots of work. It's not necessarily great paying work, but lots of small businesses, local organizations need videos made. So there's work to be had out there. So what equipment do you really need starting out with? Like I said, I had a Sony Handycam, and there's definitely small handheld video cameras that are really great that you can get, that you can even put good microphones on and stuff. The limitation of like a Handycam versus say a DSLR is that you can't really put different lenses on there. And so you might be limited as far as like how cinematic you can make your videos look. The big thing is when you have that DSLR and you can put a fast lens, with like an f1.8, you can have that really shallow depth of field. That shallow depth of field gives your videos that really cinematic look. I will say, okay, an f1.8, that's sometimes in certain situations, especially if you're doing something more journalistic, it's going to be hard to maintain focus. So in some of the reality TV shows that I work on, we use more like f4, and we'll keep the lenses even if they can have a shallower depth of field. Then that we'll keep them at f4, and that way you can still have a pretty good chance that whatever you're shooting is in focus, but then you'll still have like a pretty decent depth of field there. So I would say, actually, let me take a step back. Before you even get into the camera, the number one most important thing that you will need for videography are external hard drives, at least 2. Do not, whatever you do, just leave the footage on your laptop. First of all, these days, footage is so big that you won't fit much footage on your laptop anyway, or your desktop, or whatever your computer you have. Store it on at least two, because you want a backup. External hard drives. Okay, so those are the first things you're buying. 2 external hard drives minimum. And then you'll need SD cards for your cameras. Okay, so then Handycam or DSLR. Either one I think works. If you're concerned about 4K, and I think these days all cameras are coming out 4K anyway, but I will say this. None of my clients want me to shoot in 4K. They all just ask for HD, including the reality TV shows that I shoot for. All of their footage is shot in HD, not 4K. I am shooting my film, Voice of Vanilla, in 4K because I know that I would like to have that in theaters. Although a lot of theaters, you actually export in 2K for theaters. So whether or not that's going to be changing, I know now there's like 8K cameras, but with the way theaters are going these days with COVID and everything, I wouldn't put money on anybody upgrading to 8K. Okay, so the next thing is a variable ND filter and a viewfinder cover. And this is for shooting outdoors. So if you are going to be shooting in the sunshine, and there's a very, very high chance as a videographer, you're going to have to shoot outside in the sunshine, especially if you want to keep your shallow depth of field, you're going to need a variable ND filter. And if you don't know what that is, having an ND filter is kind of like having sunglasses for your lens. And a variable ND filter can change the amount of light that's let in. So that's really handy for quickly moving from areas that have different exposure levels. And then that viewfinder cover, again, if you have a DSLR, you are gonna need to, in order to get accurate exposure, you're gonna need something shading your screen so that you can look at it clearly and you can see like your histogram. You should always have a histogram up on your LED screen. And the extra benefit of the viewfinder cover is that it's a point of contact with your body. So definitely stability is an issue. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but having an eyepiece that you can push up to your eye, that's gonna make your camera more stable. And then microphones. So this is gonna be really, really important. Getting good sound is super important. This was the first thing that I ever bought actually to go along with my camera, was a wireless lav mic setup. And I recommend Rode, the Rode wireless lav mic system, and actually I also have a Rode on-camera shotgun mic. Those things I've had, gosh, how long? Probably like 5 years, and they're still in good shape. So yeah, definitely, and they're inexpensive. And that's why I meant they're inexpensive but quality. So I definitely recommend the Rode. So the next thing, and getting back to having a stable camera, is a shoulder mount. I have the Neewer brand. I don't know how you say that. I don't know how you pronounce it. But it's it's cheap. Admittedly, like all of my equipment that I've gotten while I was a videographer was pretty low budget, and but you know what? It does the trick. It doesn't have to be the super expensive thing. In fact, I also have a Neewer 3-point light kit, which again was way cheaper than everything else out there, but was good enough for what I needed it for. The 3-point light kit is something that I wouldn't put at the top of the need list, like what I'm listing out now, but that's a little bit further down. When you get to that point and you can buy a light kit, then do that. So, top of the list is those hard drives, your camera. I think I forgot to mention a zoom lens. So like something in the range of 25 to 80 or something like that can go down to an f4 zoom lens for your DSLR if that's what you choose to get. Then the lav mic, the wireless lav system, and an on-camera shotgun mic. And then the shoulder mount, the variable ND filter to go with your lens, and the viewfinder. And those are like your big top things. Oh, and of course, a tripod. And this, you know, you don't need one of those giant, super duper heavy $3,000 intense tripods. I have a Manfrotto BeFree, which was about $250, I would say. Again, I've had it forever. It's a little beast, but really small and light. If you have a small camera, a small tripod is going to work just fine. I will link to all of these on the website, myduckjourney.com. I don't have any affiliate links. These are literally just the equipment that I use. So take the advice or leave it. I don't get any money for promoting this stuff. I'm just letting you know. Okay, so then getting into sort of second tier, literally all that I operated with for a while was my handy cam and my wireless mic, and I had an on-camera tiny little crappy light that I rarely ever used because it just was worthless, really. So yeah, probably a couple of years I went just working with that, and eventually I got a 3-point light kit, and I got a reflector. Maybe I got the reflector before the light kit, actually, because that was helpful. I would just, yeah, definitely the reflector. And again, this is like a pretty cheap thing, but because you can light pretty easily if you're next to like a window, and then you just have a reflector set up to reflect the sunlight back on the other side of the person's face. But at any rate, a 3-point light kit I got eventually. Eventually, I started getting more prime lenses when I finally got a DSLR, which my first DSLR was the Nikon D7100, I think. I first got the Nikon D7100 and along with a zoom lens, and then eventually got like a 35 millimeter. You know, it's easier to get a cheap prime lens with like an f1.8 so you can get a real shallow depth of field. These days, drones, almost everybody wants drone footage, and especially now that the DJI has the Mini out for $350 or something like that, it's definitely worth it to get a drone. It is important to get the drone license, which is about $150. It's easy to get, guys. You just have to go in and take a test. And all the study materials for the test, everything you need to know, you can learn watching YouTube videos. And then also, once you're at this point and you've got like a lot of expensive equipment, I should say my current DSLR is the Sony A7 III, which I love. I absolutely love. Once you get to this point where you've got a camera body or maybe two, a bunch of different lenses, a drone, you know, lav mics and all of this stuff, you're getting into, you know, a pretty good chunk of gear. I definitely recommend gear insurance. I use Athos, Athos. Again, that's just, you know, what I use. I don't get any money for promoting them. I know a lot of other people, you know, that was something that was recommended to me. I've never had to use the gear insurance, so I can't say like, oh, this is a great company. They were totally there for me, you know, because thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't needed to use it. But that's what I have anyway. And then, you know, especially now that I have the Sony cameras, I upgraded my wireless lav system to the UPD, Sony UPD wireless lav system, because you can hook up two different transmitters to this one receiver. So you can have one thing on your camera, but two people with lav mics on, which is really critical next level stuff. You know, starting off with one lav mic is probably good, but once you get into your like filmmaking stuff, it's really helpful to be able to hook up two people to one camera. that is pretty much it. You know, you can get into sound gear, you can get into external recorders. I do have a Tascam D60 external recorder, although along with a boom pole and a boom mic, but I try to avoid using it because that's adding to my workflow if I have to sync up the footage, and ain't nobody got time for that. So unless I absolutely need it, unless I have a whole group of people that I'm filming and I can hire somebody to hold the boom for me, I avoid that. You know, and moving forward in my film, I would rather just hire a sound person, because good sound is really important and really difficult to get, especially if you're making a film on your own, especially if you're producing and directing and doing camera. There's no way you're going to get good sound. So just you know, find the budget to hire a sound person at that point. But starting off in videography, just get a lav mic, and one that will hook to your camera directly, so you don't have to worry about syncing stuff. That is pretty much it. Okay, going back through, must-haves, external hard drives, obviously a camera body, Handycam or DSLR, don't need 8K, forget about 8K. A zoom lens, variable ND filter with a viewfinder cover, a wireless lav system, and a shotgun mic, on-camera shotgun, a shoulder mount, a tripod. Those are your must-haves. And then next level, your 3-point light kit, drone, gear insurance, fast prime lenses, and if you've got the Sony system and you can upgrade to that UPD system where you can hook up 2 lav mics at a time, then I would definitely recommend that. I hope this is helpful. Good luck in all of your endeavors. Let me know if you have any other questions, or if you have other gear that you think is really important. Actually, let me know about that. Or if you just have questions about gear, let me know. MyDarkJourney.com is where you can find the links to all of this. And have a great week.